Some paintings have no faces, no people, not even a story you can explain, yet somehow, they're worth more than private islands. Welcome back to Luxe Quest, the channel where beauty meets fortune. Today, we're exploring 15 of the world's most expensive paintings that prove you don't need a face to make a fortune. From fields of color to hypnotic drips of paint, these masterpieces redefine what value means in the art world. Stick around till the end. Number 1 will make you question what art really means. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button and join Luxe Quest for your weekly dose of luxury discoveries, where we turn price tags into stories. Alright, let's dive into the masterpieces that turned brushstrokes into billions. At number 15, we start with Mark Rothko, the quiet philosopher of color. His work, Untitled, Yellow and Blue, sold at Sotheby's in 2015 for an astonishing $46.5 million. The buyer? A private collector whose name remains under wraps, maybe to avoid explaining how 2 rectangles cost more than a mansion in Malibu. Rothko wasn't interested in objects or faces. He wanted emotion, distilled into pure color. A floating yellow field above a deep blue ocean of stillness. Simple? Maybe. But stare long enough, and you start to feel it. It's the kind of art that whispers instead of shouts. Apparently, sadness and serenity come in very expensive shades. Modern art at its finest, minimal, mysterious, and massively priced. Next up, we move from emotion to order. Number 14, composition with large red plain, bluish gray, yellow, black and blue by Piet Mondrian. Sold for about $47.56 million at Christie's in May 2025, this painting proves that straight lines and primary colors can make your bank account go crooked. Mondrian's style, known as neoplasticism, was all about harmony and balance. He believed that behind the chaos of life lies a perfect grid of logic. Every line, every block of color, a silent rhythm of the universe. Some see math. Others see peace. Collectors? They see investment potential wrapped in minimalism. It's modern art stripped to the bone, no faces, no figures, just geometry and genius. And yes, a perfect example of how less really can be worth more. We've only just begun, and already we've crossed $90 million worth of paint and canvas. But trust me, this list only gets wilder from here. At number 13, we enter the garden of genius and tragedy, Irises by Vincent van Gogh. Sold at Sotheby's in 1987 for an astonishing $53.9 million, this was one of the first paintings ever to cross the $50 million mark. It was bought by Australian businessman Alan Bond, a man with deep pockets, or at least that's what everyone thought. Turns out, he never actually paid for it. The sale collapsed, the story made headlines, and eventually, Irises found its true home in the J. Paul Getty Museum, Los Angeles. But behind the sale lies something much deeper. Van Gogh painted irises during his stay at the asylum of Saint Remy de Provence, just a year before his death. Surrounded by silence and confinement, he turned to the asylum's garden as his escape. Look closely, and you'll see movement in every stroke, the petals sway, the leaves tremble, the colors pulse with life. It's not just flowers. It's a man trying to paint hope while his mind was falling apart. He once wrote to his brother Theo, saying, "I feel a failure, that's it as far as I'm concerned." But more than a century later, this so-called failure rests among billionaires, adored by collectors and dreamers alike. Painted in an asylum garden, now resting among billionaires. If that doesn't define irony and immortality, I don't know what does. Number 12 is where peace meets perfection. Claude Monet's Le Bassin aux Nymphes, part of his legendary Water Lilies series, sold for around $70.4 million at auction. Monet's garden pond in Giverny became his obsession for over 2 decades. Day after day, he painted it, not as it looked, but as it felt. The water reflected the sky, the willows, the seasons. It became his mirror, his meditation. He once said, "I must have flowers, always and always." And through these lilies, he gave the world serenity that money can't buy, though clearly, someone tried. The Water Lilies series is considered a gateway to abstraction. Without knowing it, Monet was already laying the foundation for modern art, where form dissolves into feeling. Every shade of violet, blue, and green feels alive, like nature breathing in color. It's Impressionism's calm chaos, where reflection meets imagination. And honestly, it's what your computer screensaver wishes it could be, but with an extra $70 million of soul. From a humble pond in France to the grand halls of private collectors, Le Bassin aux Nymphéas remains a timeless reminder that still water runs very deep, especially when it's painted by Monet. At number 11, we stay with Monet, but this time, he trades his garden for a London skyline. Le Parlement, Soleil Couchant, or the Houses of Parliament, Sunset, sold for around $76 million at Christie's. Monet visited London multiple times between 1899 and 1904, captivated by the city's fog, or as he called it, the magic of the atmosphere. From his room at the Savoy Hotel, he painted the Thames over and over, watching the sunlight dissolve into smoke and mist. In this masterpiece, the Parliament building becomes a silhouette. The real star is the sky, that molten mix of gold, purple, and haze. It's color in motion, turning industrial smog into liquid light. This wasn't just a painting, it was Monet's love letter to light itself. Critics described it as color through fog. Collectors saw it as an icon of late Impressionism. We just see proof that Monet turned London smog into gold dust. What's remarkable is that, in a time when artists were chasing detail, Monet blurred everything and somehow made it eternal. He found poetry where most people just saw pollution. And in doing so, he made the everyday, the mundane skyline into something divine. So the next time you see a grey day in London, just remember. Monet looked at that same fog and saw $76 million floating in the air. At number 10, we step into the quiet cathedral of color. Number 1, Royal Red and Blue, by Mark Rothko. Sold at Sotheby's in 2012 for around $75.1 million, this canvas is pure emotion, stripped of faces, forms, or figures. Just two great floating fields of red and blue, divided by a trembling horizon. To the untrained eye, it might look like simplicity. To those who know, it's spiritual minimalism. Rothko once said, "I'm not interested in relationships of color or form or anything else, I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions." He painted not for your eyes, but for your heart, maybe even your silence. When you stand before it, you don't just see red and blue, you feel warmth, melancholy, and something oddly human, even though no one's there. Collectors and critics call it emotion without form. We call it a meditation you can hang on a billionaire's wall. And yes, Rothko believed color could speak. Apparently, it speaks fluent millionaire. At number 9, Rothko returns, but darker, heavier, and quieter. Number 10, 1958, sold at Christie's in 2015 for about $81.9 million, marks the painter's late period, a time when his palette dimmed, and so did his spirit. The buyer remains anonymous, perhaps fitting for a work that feels like a private conversation between the canvas and the void. Gone are the bright reds and yellows of his earlier years. Here, the tones are muted, earthy, almost grieving. Rothko's late works were painted in near darkness. He once insisted his pieces be shown in dim light, so the colors would seem to glow from within. It wasn't art to him, it was an experience, a state of being. One critic called number 10 the silence of the soul. The buyer, on the other hand, probably just called it wire transfer complete. But that's the paradox of modern art, simplicity that costs millions, emptiness that somehow feels full. Rothko painted the human condition, loneliness, awe, the weight of existence. And he did it with nothing but color. Every inch of that canvas breathes tension. Red seeps into brown, brown into black, and black into thought. It's as if the painting itself is asking, "Are you still here?" And if you stare long enough, it answers, not in words, but in silence. With two Rothkos down, we've crossed more than $150 million worth of emotion on canvas, and we're only getting deeper. At number 8, we find color harmony so delicate, it's practically royal. White center, yellow, pink and lavender on rose, another hypnotic vision by Mark Rothko. Sold at Sotheby's in 2007 for an impressive $72.84 million, this pastel-tone canvas was purchased by the royal family of Qatar, a nation that has quietly built one of the world's most powerful art collections. At first glance, it's serenity itself. A white band dividing layers of pink, lavender, and rose, as if dawn, day, and dusk have frozen mid-blend. No sharp edges, no figures, just clouds of feeling suspended in color. Rothko's genius was never about complexity, it was about immersion. He wanted you to stand close, let the colors swallow your field of vision, and feel the vibration between tones. In his words, silence is so accurate. This painting radiates that silence. It doesn't scream for attention, it whispers, and somehow that whisper echoed all the way to a royal palace in Doha. Soft colors, serious money, a pastel worth a palace. And somewhere out there, a Qatari billionaire wakes up, sips coffee, and contemplates 50 Shades of Pink, the Rothko way. Number 7. Orange, Red, Yellow. This 1961 color-filled masterpiece shattered records at Christie's in 2012, selling for $86.88 million at the time, the highest price ever paid for a Rothko. Imagine standing before it, a massive canvas glowing like a living sunrise. 3 rectangles stacked in perfect tension, orange above red, red above yellow, each layer breathing warmth, pulse, and life. It's not just a painting, it's a temperature. Critics call it visual meditation. Viewers often fall silent, overwhelmed by its radiance. And collectors? Well, they call it portfolio diversification. It looks like a sunrise, priced like a sunset yacht. Rothko once said he wanted his works to make viewers cry, to feel something primal and pure. And for nearly $90 million, we can only hope the buyer felt a little more than just sticker shock. Orange, red, yellow embodies everything Rothko stood for, the power of color to move the soul without saying a single word. No portraits, no landscapes, just emotion, stripped bare, glowing forever. And as the light fades from this canvas, we step closer to the heart of modern art, where beauty, money, and mystery blend into something timeless. At number 6, Beauty Meets Tragedy and Commerce Meets Shock. Silver Car Crash, Double Disaster, by Andy Warhol. Sold at Sotheby's in 2013 for about $105.4 million, this massive canvas became one of Warhol's most valuable and haunting works. The buyer remains anonymous, a mysterious European collector who clearly enjoys their art with a side of existential dread. Warhol created this piece in 1963 as part of his Death and Disasters series, a collection that took newspaper tragedy, car wrecks, and electric chairs, and turned them into silkscreen symbols of modern life. Half the canvas glimmers in industrial silver, flat, cold, emotionless. The other half repeats the image of a mangled car crash, blurred and ghostly, as if replaying the moment of impact over and over. Warhol once said, "When you see a gruesome picture over and over again, it doesn't really have any effect." He wasn't glorifying death, he was showing how numb we've become to it. And somehow, that message, that critique of consumer culture, became one of the most expensive disasters ever sold. Who knew tragedy could be so profitable? Warhol blurred the line between beauty and morbidity, between fame and fear. He made us realize that even death can be branded, printed, and sold. At number 5, we return to light, color, and the gentle rhythm of the countryside. Claude Monet's Meules or Haystacks sold at Sotheby's in 2019 for a breathtaking $110.7 million. The buyer, Asso Plattner, a German billionaire, philanthropist, and devoted art collector. He's known for his love of Impressionism, and this painting became one of the brightest jewels in his collection. Monet painted the Haystacks series in the early 1890s, right outside his home in Giverny. He painted the same stack of harvested grain over and over again, at dawn, noon, sunset, in fog, in frost, capturing how light itself changes the world. It wasn't about hay. It was about time. Each canvas froze a fleeting moment. A shimmer of light that would never appear the same way again. Critics call Meules a masterpiece of patience and perception. Every brushstroke hums with texture, every shadow dances with color. Sure, it's just hay, until you realize each brushstroke is worth your car. This painting embodies Impressionism's ultimate magic, finding the infinite in the ordinary. Monet transformed a farmer's field into a symphony of light, and in doing so, turned simplicity into one of the most luxurious ideas in history. And that's the genius of Monet, he didn't paint wealth. He painted wonder. And wonder, it turns out, is priceless until Sotheby's gives it a number. At number 4, we return to the restless genius of Vincent van Gogh, and one of the brightest jewels of post-impressionism, Orchard with Cypresses. Sold at Christie's in 2022 for an astonishing $117.2 million, this luminous landscape captures the energy of spring, motion in every stroke, and that signature Van Gogh rhythm where even silence seems to vibrate. The buyer's identity remains a mystery, an anonymous collector somewhere out there who now owns a piece of Van Gogh's heartbeat. Painted in 1888 during his time in Meules, Orchard with Cypresses shows fruit trees in bloom under a pale Provençal sky. The colors twist, pulse, and dance, the brushwork almost alive. Each stroke feels like a breath, the kind of energy only Van Gogh could wrestle onto canvas. For Van Gogh, nature was never still. Even an orchard was in motion, a reflection of his own inner turbulence. Yet somehow, amidst that chaos, he found peace. More than a century later, that peace grew into one of the most expensive paintings ever sold. A peaceful orchard that grew into a $117 million harvest. That's one crop no farmer could compete with. At number 3, color becomes currency and emotion becomes empire. This is number 6, Violet, Green and Red, by Mark Rothko, sold in a private deal in 2014 for roughly $186 million. That price made headlines not just for the number, but for the drama that followed. The seller, Swiss art dealer Yves Bouvier. The buyer, Russian billionaire Dmitry Rybolovlev. And between them? A legal battle that would rock the art world for years. A mix of colors and a mix of lawsuits. This sale literally became modern art drama. But beyond the chaos, the painting itself remains one of Rothko's most mesmerizing creations. 3 horizontal fields of violet, green, and red melting into each other like breath and silence. It's less a painting and more a state of mind. Rothko's goal was transcendence. He said he wanted people to stand close, lose themselves, and even weep. And at nearly $200 million, it seems one man did, though probably for different reasons. This is modern art at its pinnacle, abstract emotion, distilled to pure essence. No faces, no figures, no narrative, just feeling, held captive in color. Rothko once said, "If you are moved only by color relationships, then you miss the point." And perhaps, the point here is that art doesn't need to show us the world, it only needs to remind us we're alive. And in this case, very, very wealthy. If you've made it this far, you clearly appreciate fine art and fine taste. So go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe to Luxe Quest for more luxury legends, record-breaking sales, and the stories behind the price tags. We dive deep into the world where creativity meets capital and beauty becomes its own form of currency. At number 2, we dive straight into controlled chaos, where paint becomes performance and motion becomes masterpiece. This is Jackson Pollock's number 5, 1948. Reportedly sold in May 2006 in a private sale for about $140 million, this explosive tangle of color and energy is one of the most iconic works of abstract expressionism ever created. The rumored buyer? David Martinez, a Mexican financier, though details remain as tangled as the painting itself. The seller, Hollywood mogul David Geffen, who clearly knew how to turn art into an investment blockbuster. Pollock didn't paint on the canvas, he painted in it. He laid it on the floor, poured, dripped, and flung enamel like a conductor leading an orchestra of chaos. Critics once mocked it as a mess. But today? It's a $140 million storm frozen in time. So next time your kid spills paint, just tell them they're channeling Pollock and maybe start a trust fund. Pollock's work wasn't about precision, it was about freedom. He turned gravity, rhythm, and raw emotion into art that refuses to be explained, only felt. And that, perhaps, is why number 5, 1948 remains a symbol of what happens when art stops trying to look beautiful and dares to simply be. And here we are, number 1. The crown jewel of faceless, formless, fearless art, Jackson Pollock's number 17A. Sold in a private sale, reportedly around $200 million, this painting became one of the most expensive artworks ever sold in history. The buyer? Kenneth C. Griffin, billionaire hedge fund titan and art collector. The seller, once again, David Geffen, yes, the man who seems to flip masterpieces like blue-chip stocks. Painted in 1948, number 17A is pure Pollock, wild, energetic, dripping color and motion across a massive canvas. There's no focal point, no subject, no face, just rhythm and chaos perfectly balanced, like a universe forming from nothing. Some call it madness. Others, genius. But one thing's certain, no artist ever made a mess so mesmerizing. If this is what spilled paint looks like, then maybe I've been mopping up $1 million mistakes my whole life. Pollock didn't just change art, he changed freedom. He proved that emotion itself could be the subject, that a single gesture could capture the complexity of existence. And for $200 million, one collector decided that gesture was worth more than gold. From Monet's shimmering light to Rothko's silent colors, from Van Gogh's living skies to Pollock's chaotic poetry, these are the faces of art without faces. 15 masterpieces that prove beauty doesn't always need a portrait, just passion, patience, and a price tag that makes your accountant sweat. If you enjoyed this journey through luxury and creativity, make sure to subscribe to Luxe Quest, where we uncover the world's rarest treasures, most expensive creations, and the fascinating stories behind them. Hit the bell, stay curious, and remember: luxury isn't about what you own. It's about what moves you.